Ladies and gentlemen, you wake up. The sun is rising. Or maybe it isn't. Maybe it's gray outside. Maybe the weight of the world feels like it's crushing your chest before your feet even hit the floor. But here's the thing, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you get up anyway. Because 2025 isn't going to be handed to you. It's not some shiny trophy waiting at the finish line for the lucky few. No, 2025 is going to be earned by those willing to fight for it. And if you're listening to this, that means you. Let me tell you something hard but true. Life doesn't care about your excuses. It doesn't care that you're tired, that you're scared, that the odds seem stacked against you. The world is a brutal, competitive place, and if you don't step up, someone else will. That's not pessimism. That's reality, and reality doesn't negotiate. So what are you going to do about it? You want the best of 2025. Then you have to become the best version of yourself right now, not tomorrow, not when things calm down, not when the stars align now, because time doesn't stop. Every second you waste hesitating, every moment you spend trapped in self. Doubt is a second you'll never get back. And 2025, it's already coming, fast. Here's the first rule. Take responsibility. That's the foundation of everything. You are not a victim of circumstance unless you choose to be. Yes, bad things happen. Yes, life is unfair. But you know what's even more unfair? Letting those things define you. Letting them dictate your future. No. You stand up, you square your shoulders, and you say, this is mine to fix. Because it is. Now, let's talk about discipline. Discipline is the price of freedom. You think successful people just wake up motivated? No. They wake up and do the work even when they don't feel like it. Especially when they don't feel like it. Motivation is fickle, it comes and goes. Discipline, that's what carries you through the storm. So you make a plan. You set a goal. And then you execute day after day, no matter what. And don't tell me it's too hard. Don't tell me you can't. You can. You just have to want it badly enough. See, most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they give up too soon. They hit a wall and decide it's impossible. But walls aren't there to stop you. They're there to see how badly you want what's on the other side. So you climb, you push, you break through. Now, let's talk about fear. Fear is the mind. Killer. It paralyzes you, makes you doubt yourself, convinces you that you're not good enough. But here's the truth, fear doesn't go away. The bravest people in the world aren't fearless. They're the ones who move forward despite the fear, so you acknowledge it. You say, yes, I'm scared, and I'm doing it anyway. That's courage. That's how you grow, and growth, real growth, is painful. It requires you to face your weaknesses, to admit where you've fallen short, to stare into the abyss of your own inadequacies and say, I can do better. That's humility. That's strength, because the person who thinks they have nothing left to learn is already dead inside. So you seek knowledge, you read, you listen, you surround yourself with people who challenge you. Not people who coddle you, who tell you what you want to hear. No, you find the ones who tell you the truth even when it hurts, because those are the ones who actually care about your success. And then you take action, massive, relentless action. You don't wait for permission. You don't wait for the perfect moment. There is no perfect moment. There's only now, so you start, you fail, you learn, you adjust. And you keep going, because here's the secret. The best of 2025 isn't some distant dream. It's the sum of every choice you make between now and then. Every morning you wake up early. Every night you push a little harder. Every time you refuse to quit. That's how you build a future worth living. So ask yourself, what do you want, and what are you willing to sacrifice to get it? Because nothing worth having comes easy. Nothing, but if you're willing to put in the work, really put in the work, then 2025 won't just be another year. It'll be your year. The year you looked in the mirror and finally saw the person you were always meant to be. Now go. Get to work. The clock is ticking. You wake up each morning with a choice. A choice that will determine the trajectory of your entire life. You can either look at the circumstances around you, the setbacks, the injustices, the obstacles, and surrender to the idea that they control you, or you can stand up, square your shoulders, and declare, "This is mine to fix." That is the essence of taking absolute responsibility. It's not just a mindset, it's a way of being, a refusal to let anything, external or internal, dictate your fate. Because the moment you accept that you are the architect of your own destiny, everything changes. The victim mentality evaporates, excuses crumble, and suddenly the power that was always yours returns to your hands. Most people don't want this responsibility. It's heavy, it's uncomfortable. It means no more blaming the economy, the government, your upbringing, or bad luck. It means looking in the mirror and admitting that if your life isn't where you want it to be, you are the only one who can change it. That's a terrifying thought for many, because it means there's no one left to point the finger at but yourself. But here's the paradox: that very terror is the doorway to freedom, because if you're the problem, then you're also the solution. Think about the last time you failed at something. Maybe it was a job you didn't get, a goal you fell short of, a relationship that fell apart. What was your immediate reaction? Did you dissect your own actions, your own decisions, and ask, where did I go wrong? Or did you default to explanations that placed discipline is the silent engine that drives success when motivation has long faded? It's the force that drags you out of bed at dawn when every fiber of your being begs for another hour of sleep. It's what keeps you grinding when the initial excitement wears off, when the goal seems distant, when doubt whispers that it's not worth the effort. Motivation is a spark, bright, fleeting, and unreliable. Discipline is the fire you tend day after day, regardless of how you feel. Think about the last time you were truly motivated. Maybe it was a New Year's resolution, a stirring speech, or a sudden burst of inspiration. For a few days, maybe even weeks, you were unstoppable, but then life crept back in, the rush faded, the obstacles piled up, and suddenly that fiery drive was reduced to embers. This is where most people fail. They mistake motivation for fuel, not realizing it's merely the ignition. The real work, the relentless, unglamorous daily grind requires something far more durable: discipline. Discipline is not a trait you're born with. It's a skill forged through repetition, through showing up even when every excuse in the world seems justified. It's the athlete training in the rain, the writer facing the blank page despite writer's block, the entrepreneur working late after a demoralizing setback. Discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It doesn't care if you're tired, stressed, or uninspired. It only demands one thing: action. The myth of motivation is dangerous because it tricks people into waiting for the right mood, the perfect moment, the surge of enthusiasm. But greatness doesn't wait. The world doesn't pause for your inspiration. While you're hesitating, someone else is putting in the work. Someone else is building the habit of discipline, stacking small, consistent efforts until they compound into something extraordinary. Discipline is the bridge between goals and accomplishment. A goal without discipline is just a wish. You can dream about writing a book, but unless you sit down and write daily without fail, it will never materialize. You can fantasize about a fit body, but unless you push through the days when the gym feels like torture, you'll remain unchanged. Discipline is the difference between wanting and having, between imagining and achieving. And here's the secret: discipline begets discipline. Every time you force yourself to do what you don't feel like doing, you strengthen that muscle. It gets easier, not because the work itself becomes less demanding, but because you become stronger. You train your mind to override momentary discomfort for long-term gain. You stop negotiating with weakness. You stop asking, "Do I feel like it?" and start declaring, "It doesn't matter. I do it anyway." This is how legends are built, not through sporadic bursts of effort, but through the quiet daily decisions to stay the course. The marathon runner doesn't win because they felt like training every day. The Nobel Prize winner didn't make their breakthrough because they were always inspired. They succeeded because they showed up rain or shine, motivated or not, and put in the work. Discipline is also the ultimate form of self-respect. It's a promise you make to yourself and keep, no matter what. When you commit to a task and follow through, you reinforce trust in your own word. You prove to yourself that you are reliable, that you don't crumble at the first sign of resistance. This builds an unshakable confidence, a knowledge deep in your bones that you can depend on yourself when it counts. The world is full of talented, intelligent people who never reached their potential because they relied on motivation alone. They waited for the right mood, the perfect conditions, the stars to align. Meanwhile, the disciplined, those who embraced the grind, who understood that consistency trumps intensity, left them in the dust. So ask yourself, are you waiting for motivation to strike, or are you cultivating the discipline to act regardless? Are you at the mercy of your fleeting emotions, or are you building the resilience to push through them? The choice is yours, and the results will speak for themselves. Fear lives in the shadows of every great endeavor, whispering doubts where dreams take shape. It wraps itself around your ambitions like morning fog, dense, chilling, distorting what you know to be true. But here's what fear doesn't want you to realize. Its presence doesn't mark the end of your journey. It marks the starting line. Every person who ever achieved anything meaningful stood exactly where you stand now. Heart pounding, palms damp, staring down the gap between who they are and who they must become. The difference between those who transcend and those who remain trapped isn't the absence of fear, but their relationship to it. Consider the physiology of fear, that primal surge of adrenaline, the sharpening of senses, the way time seems to slow. These aren't signals to retreat. They're your body's ancient code preparing you for battle. Our ancestors survived because fear made them alert to danger. But civilization's greatest advances happened when individuals reinterpreted that signal. The racing heart before a speech, energy waiting to be channeled. The nausea before a career leap. The birth pangs of transformation. Fear and excitement share the same biological blueprint. The difference lies in the story you attach to the sensation. The modern world has distorted fear into something unnatural, something to be medicated or avoided at all costs. We've built entire industries around the illusion of risk, free living, endless scrolling to avoid the fear of missing out, superficial busyness to escape the fear of insignificance, perfected online personas masking the fear of being truly seen. But this avoidance strategy backfires spectacularly. Fear that isn't faced doesn't disappear, it metastasizes. It migrates from the specific fear of failing this project to the existential fear that you're fundamentally inadequate. The monster under the bed grows larger the longer you refuse to look. Real growth begins when you stop asking, "How do I eliminate fear?" and start asking, "What does this fear require of me?" Every fear contains hidden curriculum. The fear of public speaking demands you develop authentic presence. The fear of financial instability forces financial literacy. The fear of rejection teaches emotional resilience. The pattern holds true across domains. The very thing you're afraid of holds the exact skill or mindset you need to cultivate next. In this light, fear becomes not an obstacle, but the most accurate compass you possess, pointing unerringly toward your necessary growth. History's most courageous figures didn't lack fear. They developed what psychologists call fear tolerance. Mandela walked toward political imprisonment knowing he might never see freedom again. Curie handled radioactive materials understanding the physical cost. Entrepreneurs bet life savings on uncertain ventures. Their bravery wasn't the absence of terror, but the absolute commitment to something larger than their discomfort. You cultivate this same quality each time you act despite fear's protest. Each awkward conversation started, each vulnerable piece of art shared, each honest admission voiced. Courage is a muscle that strengthens with youth. There's an alchemy that occurs when you stop resisting fear and start moving through it. The energy once spent on avoidance becomes available for creation. The mental real estate previously occupied by what-ifs transforms into space for innovation. This is why those who have faced profound fears often describe the experience as liberation. Not because the fear disappears, but because their relationship to it changes. The dragon guarding the treasure becomes the force that forged your armor. Modern psychology confirms what ancient traditions always knew. Exposure therapy works. Whether it's fear of heights, social anxiety, or creative blocks, systematic exposure diminishes fear's power. The first time you ask for a raise, your voice might shake. The 10th time, you'll notice patterns in negotiations. The 100th time, you'll recognize fear as simply part of the dance. This principle applies universally. Fear of failure shrinks with each attempt. Fear of conflict weakens with each difficult conversation. Fear of uncertainty lessens with each leap into the unknown. Yet there's a crucial distinction between productive fear and paralyzing terror. Productive fear lives at the edge of your competence, the nervous excitement before a challenge you're prepared to meet. Paralyzing terror comes from facing threats you're genuinely unequipped to handle. Wisdom lies in discerning between the two. Sometimes fear is a stop sign warning you to prepare more thoroughly. Other times it's a traffic light you must run to reach your destination. The warrior and the fool both feel fear. The difference is in their discernment. Consider how fear shapes identity. The person who avoids all fear becomes fragile, their world shrinking with each avoidance. Meanwhile, the person who regularly confronts fear develops what Nietzsche called the will to power. Not domination over others, but mastery over oneself. Each fear faced expands your territory of competence, your range of motion through life. Where you once trembled at the thought of networking events, you now work the room with ease. What once seemed an impossible standard, public performance, leadership, creative exposure, becomes familiar ground. Your past fears become present strengths, and this transformation builds upon itself exponentially. The most insidious fears aren't about external threats, but internal revelations. The fear that you might actually succeed and have to sustain that success. The fear that you're more powerful than you've allowed yourself to believe. The fear that owning your potential requires leaving old identity behind. These existential fears often disguise themselves as practical concerns, which is why so many people self-sabotage when nearing breakthroughs. Recognizing this pattern is half the battle. When you notice yourself procrastinating on a pivotal project or picking fights before important events, ask what deeper fear might be operating beneath the surface. The antidote to fear's paralysis isn't confidence, it's action. Not reckless action, but deliberate movement forward despite uncertainty. Action proves to your nervous system that you can handle discomfort. Action provides data to counter catastrophic thinking. Action transforms the abstract monster of what if into the manageable reality of what is. Every time you complete a feared task, you overwrite neural pathways, teaching your brain that survival doesn't require avoidance. This is how people recover from phobias, how performers overcome stage fright, how innovators persist despite skepticism, not by eliminating fear, but by outacting it. There's a profound truth hidden in the etymology of fearless. It doesn't mean the absence of fear, it means being so full of purpose that fear loses its veto power. When your vision becomes more compelling than your comfort, fear shifts from roadblock to fuel. This explains why parents can perform superhuman feats to protect children, why activists face persecution for causes, why artists endure poverty for their craft. Their why burns brighter than their what if. The journey through fear follows a predictable arc. First, the visceral reaction, racing heart, shallow breathing. Then the cognitive resistance, catastrophic predictions, self. Doubt, finally the choice point, retreat or advance. Mastering fear means lengthening the space between stimulus and response, inserting conscious choice where panic once ruled. Breath becomes the anchor here. Deep diaphragmatic breathing signals safety to the nervous system, creating space for rational thought. This simple physiological hack explains why Navy SEALs train in box breathing, why elite athletes develop pre-performance rituals, why speakers pause before beginning. They're not eliminating fear, they're creating space to act despite it. Ultimately, fear's greatest deception is convincing you that you're alone in feeling it. Every innovator staring at a blank page, every leader facing a tough decision, every creator sharing their work. They all know fear intimately. The separation between those who achieve and those who dream lies in their willingness to move forward in fellowship with fear rather than in slavery to it. Your fear isn't unique, but your ability to harness it can be. So the next time fear grips you, before the important conversation, the career leap, the vulnerable creation, recognize it for what it is, not a stop sign but an initiation rite. The sweat on your palms isn't weakness leaving your body, it's the price of admission to growth. The tightness in your chest isn't a warning to turn back, it's the feeling of your comfort zone expanding. What you interpret as fear might just be your future self, stronger, wiser, more capable, calling you forward. The barrier isn't the end, it's the way through. The future doesn't belong to the wisest, the most talented, or even the most intelligent. It belongs to those who act, relentlessly, unapologetically, with a kind of stubborn persistence that borders on obsession. While others debate, you do. While they hesitate, you move. While they wait for perfect conditions, you create them through sheer force of action. This is the fundamental law of achievement. The universe rewards motion. Ideas are currency only when cashed in through execution. Potential is meaningless unless converted into kinetic energy. Your future isn't written in the stars. It's forged in the daily decisions to show up, to push forward, to outwork your doubts and outlast your setbacks. Consider the physics of momentum. An object in motion tends to stay in motion, while an object at rest remains stuck. The same principle governs human achievement. The first action is always the hardest. The initial rep in the gym, the first sentence on the blank page, the opening salvo in a difficult conversation. But once movement begins, a magical alchemy occurs. Resistance weakens, confidence builds, opportunities materialize that were invisible from the starting line. This isn't mystical thinking. It's the compound effect of action creating more action. Every step forward alters your trajectory in ways planning alone never could. History's great builders understood this truth in their bones. The pyramids didn't rise from brilliant blueprints alone, but from countless stones laid day after grueling day. Silicon Valley wasn't built on ideas, but on all-night coding sessions and relentless iteration. The civil rights movement didn't advance through philosophy alone, but through countless marches, meetings, and acts of courageous defiance. At some point, theory must yield to sweat. Strategy must surrender to motion. The difference between visionaries who change the world and dreamers who merely imagine is their willingness to bleed for the work. Yet modern culture conspires against this truth. We've created an entire economy of distraction, endless podcasts about productivity that prevent actual work, motivational content consumed instead of action taken, planning tools that become substitutes for doing. There's a perverse comfort in preparation, in research, in getting ready to get ready. But the brutal reality remains, no amount of thinking burns calories, no quantity of brainstorming builds muscle. At some point, you must leap from the theoretical to the actual, where real growth occurs through friction with reality. Relentless action isn't about blind hustle, it's about strategic momentum. The Japanese concept of Kaizen teaches the power of continuous small improvements. A 1% better workout each day compounds into transformative fitness over a year. Writing 500 words daily produces novels where waiting for inspiration yields blank pages. The math is unforgiving. Consistent action outperforms sporadic brilliance every time. This is how ordinary people achieve extraordinary results. Not through superhuman efforts, but through human consistency applied without interruption. Action also serves as the ultimate truth teller. Ideas tested in the laboratory of reality either flourish or fail quickly, providing invaluable data. The entrepreneur who actually launches learns more in a week than the theorizer learns in a year. The artist who publishes work improves faster than the perfectionist hoarding creations. There's a reason successful people seem to have instincts. They've simply made enough mistakes in the real world to recognize patterns invisible to armchair analysts. Your best teacher isn't contemplation but consequence. This principle extends beyond professional pursuits into personal transformation. Want to become more confident? Act confidently until the feeling follows. Need to overcome social anxiety? Force yourself into conversations until discomfort fades. Seeking wisdom? Make decisions and learn from outcomes rather than avoiding choices. Identity isn't discovered through introspection. It's forged through repeated action. You become what you consistently do, not what you occasionally ponder. The resistance to action often masquerades as rationality. I need more credentials. The market isn't right. I'll start when I have more savings. These sound like reasonable concerns, but are often fear in intellectual drag. The perfect moment never arrives. Complete preparation is a myth. At some point, you must start before you feel ready, trusting that clarity comes from engagement, not contemplation. The most successful people aren't those who eliminate risk, but those who take calculated risks with eyes wide open. Action also possesses a curious quality. It generates its own energy. While procrastination drains you, the mental weight of unfinished work is heavier than the work itself. Motion creates momentum. Crossing one item off your list makes the next easier. Finishing a project fuels confidence for the next challenge. This creates an upward spiral where productivity begets more productivity, just as stagnation leads to further stagnation. The hardest part isn't the work, it's starting the work. Consider how action reshapes perception. Watching others succeed from the sidelines makes their achievement seem magical, but once you're in the arena, once you've struggled through your own failed attempts and incremental wins, you recognize success for what it truly is, the residue of relentless effort. This is why those who actually build things rarely suffer from imposter syndrome for long. They know exactly what their accomplishments cost in late nights and hard lessons. Action demystifies achievement. The myth of being discovered persists because it's comforting, the fantasy that some gatekeeper will recognize your latent genius and elevate you, but the reality is nearly opposite. Gatekeepers respond to proof, not potential. Agents sign authors with finished manuscripts. Investors fund entrepreneurs with traction. Galleries exhibit artists with bodies of work. The world doesn't reward what you could do, it rewards what you've already done. Action is the only language opportunity understands. This isn't to dismiss planning entirely, but to recognize its proper place. Strategy is the map, action is the journey. Planning helps avoid obvious pitfalls, but only movement reveals the terrain. Military strategists understand that no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy. Success goes to those who can adapt while in motion. The same holds true for your ambitions. You can't predict every obstacle, but you can develop the reflexes to navigate them by staying in constant forward motion. Technology has distorted our relationship with action. The digital world offers the illusion of productivity. Endless scrolling through business advice, downloading productivity apps, curating inspiration boards. But real work remains stubbornly analog. It's sentences written, sales calls made, skills practiced. The apps won't write your book. The podcasts won't build your business. At some point, you must close the tabs and open your notebook. The gap between consumption and creation is where futures are won or lost. There's also a moral dimension to action. Potential unexpressed becomes a kind of rot. Gifts unused atrophy. The painter who never paints doesn't just fail to create art. They fail to become an artist. The would-be entrepreneur who never starts doesn't just miss financial rewards. They miss becoming the version of themselves capable of building something. Your best self isn't found through meditation alone, but through the crucible of meaningful action. The beautiful paradox of relentless action is that it transforms the actor. The discipline required to write daily reshapes you into a writer. The courage to keep pitching turns you into a closer. The resilience to continue after failure forges real confidence. Unlike passive waiting, action doesn't just move you toward goals. It rebuilds you in their image. Who you become through the process matters more than what you ultimately achieve. So the question isn't whether you have what it takes. It's whether you'll take what you have and put it to work. Today, now, without guarantee of success, the future has always belonged to those willing to build it brick by brick, day after day, through disappointments and small victories alike. Your hands were made for shaping reality, not wringing in anxiety. The world is waiting for your version of relentless.